So I can start doing that. We should have a few more folks joining in. We've got 4 minutes.
All right, great.
Your sound is coming in really good, Adrian.
Excellent. I'm a remote worker and have been for a long time, so I already had a camera and a microphone set up.
I need to invest in better tools. One of the things I'm doing just for when I'm building e-learning is building a sound, like a box booth. So that's my little weekend craft project. My daughter is going to help me. Grandkids might get in on it too. They like anything where you've got to cut and use glue and stuff. So
that's great.
Let's see how they do.
Closets work really well too.
Yeah. but I've heard, and I have a good friend who actually has her own business, you know, doing recordings. She's a chapter member, and her husband does videos, right?
Oh, nice.
So they're empty nesters. So they've taken one room, and that's their recording studio, right? And they've got like all green walls and backdrops, and like you come in and you think like you know, almost like at a Disney production room, like,
nice.
Right? That's how nice they've done it. And then for when she has to do, you know, projects, and maybe he's also working on something in that room, one of the closets, and because they have 2 masters, is a full-on soundproof closet, you know.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I'm like, well, I'm not there yet. When I grow up, I want to be like you. For now,
well, I know, and Alex is doing a ton with that too. I mean, he's
my God,
he's got a full studio.
Yeah, exactly.
He could
so
probably,
that's why he's Chief of Awesomeness.
Right.
You know, I love that title, and you know, he's definitely, he shows you why he is the Chief of Awesomeness. Yeah, he's so innovative.
Indeed.
All right, we are about a minute away, so we will respect the time of the folks that did arrive on time. And thank you for that, Heidi and Noel. I'm sure there'll be a few folks that'll chime in a few minutes, as sometimes they tend to do. Sometimes we straggle in, but we will get started and keep this party moving. So welcome everyone to today's session, which is Embracing the Digital Divide, with our host today, who is Adrian La Sala. And Adrian is going to talk to us about the tools that his organization used to get out of some of the, I guess we could call it, all of the extra I don't know, almost too much clutter, too much clattering of tools, right? Too much noise from all the different things that we're using to collaborate. So he's going to share some of those tips and tricks that he learned using a tool called Working Out Loud. And so more about that in a minute. Did want to share, for those of you who might not know who the members of the board are, this is our current board with our Chief of Awesomeness, Alex Salas, as president, and Zizo, who is going to be our 2021 president and try to fill Alex's shoes. I am the current past president and also helping with programs. And then we've got Kathy, Christina, and Lisa Ann, who also support the chapter in membership, finance, and communications. On this call with me, assisting me, is Marcela Iannini, and she is our Director of Programs, and she will be answering any questions in the chat and helping us with that, and with just moving this webinar along and making it all seem so seamless to you all. So your experience is wonderful. Everything that we do here at the chapter, we attempt to align to our talent development capability model. For those of you that may not be aware, ATD has recently made an update to the previous competency model. And so today's session is actually hitting on several of the areas of that capability model, such as communication, collaboration, lifelong learning, just to name a few. So definitely check out our website where this event was listed, and you'll be able to see those other areas of the model that would fall under this topic today. So again, today our host for this talk is Adrian La Sala, and Adrian has been a chapter member for quite some time, previous volunteer. Always room for you on the board whenever you want, Adrian. I know you're busy, but we can always use the help. And just so you all know, ladies and gentlemen, Adrian has a love of technology, and hence why he's in the role that he's in with his organization, which is PTC. He is also a collaborator. He loves storytelling and has a passion for helping people learn. That is what drives him to continually explore different ways to show people things and media to package that information, to reach people and connect people and help others do the same. That is how this topic was born, helping him show us how to make the most out of using digital productivity and collaboration tools. So without further ado, I bring you Adrian La Sala. Adrian, you can go ahead and start sharing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Give me just a second to get oriented here. And all right. So one more thing to get organized here, and voila, now I'm all set. All right, so my name's Adrian La Sala. Oh, I'm not sharing the right thing. Whenever I pull up Zoom, then that goes away. So now I can't see any of you.
All right, so, but you are able to click share. I can stop my share. There we go.
I'm getting closer. Give me a second.
We see a beautiful image of a tree leaves.
That is my desktop.
Very soothing.
I'm good. Closer still. And
there we go.
One more swap. And voila, now we're in the show. All right, so sorry about that. So my name's Adrian La Sala, and I am with a company called PTC, which you may not have heard of. We are a software company and have been around since, I'm not sure, the late 80s, early 90s. We got our start in CAD software. So I'm going to give you a little introduction to us, and then I'll come back to embracing the digital workplace. Hold on. There we go. All right. So the PTC is a software company, like I said, that's been around for many years. We have about 6,000 employees worldwide. We started in engineering software, and so everything that we do is related to engineering software and helping companies create their products. We have all sorts of customers who do all sorts of things with physical products, which you use, from bikes to cars to planes to toys to anything physical. There's a good chance that that our software was used to help create it. So that creates an incredibly complicated technology stack, right? And I'm not expecting you to understand our stuff, but it goes from the idea that somebody's designing the product, then they start doing prototypes, then they get it connected and manufacture the product and service the product, and the product is connected through the internet, which the Internet of Things and IoT, to talk back to them so they can learn how it's being used in the field, and back around to designing it or analytics here and back around. So one of the things that we've gotten into recently actually is augmented reality, because our customers use our CAD tool to create a 3D model of their product. They can then use that 3D model to help their customers visualize components inside, that kind of thing, through augmented reality. So I'm only going to mention two of our products here because they might be useful to this audience. The first is something called Euphoria Chalk. So Euphoria Chalk is basically like FaceTime, except that you can draw in the other person's environment. And what you draw there persists. So you can see here, this woman's looking at this little circle, right? If she moves her iPad away from it and moves it back, that circle stays in the place in her physical world and goes off screen when she moves it over to the side. So the way that you would use this is typically for remote support. So she's looking at this group of wires, she's not sure what to do, and a more seasoned engineer is working with her and says, oh, move this one from there to there, and draws on screen into her world what she needs to do. But you could use it creatively in classes, and right now it's available for free. During the COVID-19 crisis, you're allowed to use it and try it out. So if you want to play with it, feel free. The URL is down here at the bottom. The second one is actually much more learning space related, and this is called Expert Capture. Expert Capture allows you to basically create like AR e-learning. It's that simple. So you can use a device like a HoloLens or even just a camera to take a photograph or record a small movie, and then you could edit them into steps that then somebody can play back through augmented reality in their real world. So, you know, this guy's wearing this, he walks up to this machine and he completes step 6 and it'll show a dotted line over to the other machine where he has to go perform his next task. And so you can watch this movie, you can go find this, search for Euphoria Expert Capture, and you can see a little like 2-minute video of what this looks like in action. But this is one of the other things we do, which might resonate with this audience more than you know, a 3D CAD tool, which you're probably not going to all of a sudden become a mechanical engineer. All right, so that's us. That's my little PSA. Now I want to say 2 things about me. Two things about this session. One, I am basically sharing with you the program that we used, and when I say program, not software, but the approach that we use to help people understand the digital workplace. And when I say digital workplace, I mean the space that we all work in a digital space, right? So there are a lot of tools that have come out to help us communicate together, to help us to collaborate together. And it's hard for everybody to make sense of these. And so providing our audience a way to do that, a way to use those tools is helpful. And then giving them a framework in which to do that and a path to learn how to do it is kind of the thing that we as you know, learning folk can help our audience do. All right, so it all starts here, right? There's all these tools that are designed to help you collaborate. There's Teams, there's Slack, there's Yammer, there's Workplace for Facebook, there's email, there's all sorts of different things, there's Trello, there's just so many different tools that you could be using to help coordinate work, to help communicate with each other. And so helping your audience make sense of that is a key. What we tend to get though is silos. We tend to get people working in different groups in different ways. And it's not because they don't want to work together. It's not that they don't want to share information. They haven't been given a way to do it. They haven't been given a landscape to do it in. And that's what that framework can do. And so what we can do is we can help people bring information and people together by giving them this approach and giving them a way to understand what their digital workplace consists of. So the way that the things that we did to do that, where we created a communication framework, which again is just sort of a what to use when, and we worked with our leaders to give them an understanding of the importance of this. And in fact, more recently, I've seen in the literature, this is often referred to as digital leadership. And so helping your leaders understand, it can be part of leadership training programs, helping them understand how to use these tools to be a more effective leader is key too. And then finally, we are exploring and continue to work with this Working Out Loud program that Rosa mentioned, which is essentially a behavior change program. And it has a lot of elements that help people take the baby steps necessary to really embrace using these tools. And it is the thing that's compelling, one of the things that's compelling about it. There are many things that are compelling about it, but one of the things that's compelling about it is that it is free to use. And so often you might come to a webinar and be, oh, I'm not going to get anything out of this that I can use right away unless I spend some money. That's not my session. I'm just sharing what we're doing, and I'm sharing the tools and resources I've found so that you can do it too if it's useful to you. All right, so be ready to take notes because I may have a link or I may share something that you won't want to refer back to. So this is where our framework starts, with these concentric circles. And it's the idea that you are an individual and you need to communicate with all sorts of different groups, and you exist within multiple groups. There's your hierarchical team, but that's not the only team you're part of. Maybe there's a project team you're part of. Maybe you're also part of a team that just likes to go to lunch together. So you're part of different groups of people, right? And these are this is your tight, close-knit circle. But then there's a broader organization. Now we're 6,000 people wide. So that organization may even be part of the company as a separate group. So for example, I'm in what's called the field organization, which is our customer facing organization, but product development's a whole different group. I don't really interact with them as often, but within the field, we have lots of ways to have conversations. And when I'm not speaking to that tight circle of 20 people who I know, and I'm speaking to 1,000 people, how do I do that? What tools do I do that with? Then there's the company at large, which actually has a lot more push communication, a lot of leadership conversations, a lot of top-down stuff. And then there's external, because we have to recognize we don't just exist internally to the company. Everything that we do exists externally. So we have the Microsoft Office 365 suite. So I put this in context of that suite, but this works with other things. So at the core is your email and your task list. You can think of this as, in fact, I'll advance again because it helps to put this all in context of the physical space. Remember, we're talking about the digital workspace. So think of this stuff as your physical world, in parallel to your physical world. So you manage you at your desk. So this is email, this is your to-do list, this is your calendar, this is that stuff. But as a team, you maybe sit in a group of cubicles, or you go into a conference room, or you work in part of the building. Tools like Microsoft Teams, tools like Slack are for these tight groups where people, high context conversations, you don't have to explain everything you're talking about. You know each other, you can have quick fire messages and advance, right? Then in the next level comes the enterprise social networks, tools like Yammer or Workplace by Facebook, or in some cases Slack still, because Slack, sometimes people just have really large groups. But this is the case where you're communicating like a social network. You're communicating and you don't necessarily know who's out there who's going to see it, but you're willing to ask questions openly because you've created that enterprise social network as a safe space. Then beyond that is sort of that intranet, that formal layer. And then beyond that is, and I say the commons, which is sort of our main, large meeting space that we have. And then outside of that is, again, the fact that you exist externally, and having an external digital presence is actually as important as having an internal digital presence for you and for your company. People often think of LinkedIn as not necessarily belonging to the company, but you are a representation of the company if you go to a conference, and you're a representation of the company if you exist online. So we've broken this into sort of 3 different programs. I'm going to take you through these 3 different programs. Gotta watch my time. I'm going to take you through these 3 different programs, or 3 different parts of one program. Our new our new byline, whatever, I don't know. PTC used to stand for something, and like IBM used to stand for something. It now stands for the power to create. And so we've broken this into the power to connect, the power to communicate, and the power to collaborate. And the idea is that if you go back to this slide, you connect in the social channels. This is where you connect off of all sorts of things. You communicate, which is sort of that push communication in this area, and you collaborate down here in this area. So that's how those 2 things fit together. Now I'm going to take you through some of the stuff that we share with our people. So the first one of those is the power to connect. And so this is focusing on those social networks, Yammer and LinkedIn. And the idea here is that you craft your own digital twin, your digital presence. Digital twin is an engineering term I'm playing off of here. You develop that presence, and you actually take an active role in connecting with people, sharing what you know and learning from each other, that you actually consider that part of good work. And I think, enterprise social networks have mixed adoption, right? It depends on where you are and how well they are. But now that we're almost all remote, if you happen to be in a situation like us anyway, it's all those little serendipitous conversations that you miss if you don't actively participate in these types of channels. These are the hallway conversations, the break room conversations, the types of things that you took for granted and now no longer have, and you wonder why you feel so disconnected from everybody. That is what these tools let you do. So within these, we encourage people to connect, consume, and contribute. More C's, so it just gets gets confusing. But under that connect thing, the first thing we say is, get online, have that presence. So here's a little activity we do with people. You can do this on your own if you want, or encourage your peers to do it. It's a great learning experience. It's that outside in looking at yourself, right? So search for a colleague's profile on LinkedIn or internally and answer these questions. What's your first impression? Do you actually know what they do? Do you understand what they do? Can they present themselves in an inspiring way? Do you like what they do? And here's a key frame, a lens to look through, right? Would you work for them? Right? If you're trying to draw talent to your company, if you're trying to be an inspiring company, does your LinkedIn profile inspire? Does that person reflect well on the company? And the same for yourself. Then you can go through and do the same activity yourself, right? And now I'm going to give you another little thing. I told you there might be some things along the way. So this is, what you measure, you can improve. And you may not realize this, but if you have a LinkedIn profile, you're being measured at how good you are at having a LinkedIn profile. And if you go to this URL, you can see your current score out of 100 on how effective you are. So take a moment to do that.
By the way, everyone, I'm sharing the links in the chat, so feel free to grab them from the chat.
All right, now this score is actually designed, it's why it's under /sales/SSI. It's your social selling index, and it's really, in a way, almost a marketing tool for LinkedIn, because you may have noticed that occasionally you get approached by salespeople in a chat. They're using a tool called Sales Navigator to reach you. But this is their way to see, are you establishing your brand? Are you finding the right people to connect with? Are you engaging with insights? And are you building relationships? The game is rigged. On the middle two, you can't actually get higher than something like 75% if you don't have a Sales Navigator license. So don't expect to get to 100, but it still does give you an impression of how your behaviors are affecting, your ability to connect with others, your digital presence. At each one of these is a little slideshow which helps you how to improve them. But this is the kind of thing which, again, you can use to help your audience reflect and all of a sudden be like, oh, hey, look, I'm really good at this, or I haven't been paying attention to this at all. And when you got a room full of people sharing their stuff, that can be fun. So we then give 3 tips of main things to improve. So I'll just share these again, not that we're, the experts on LinkedIn. It's just the kinds of advice that we give to people, make a little workshop out of this. So work on your picture, have a professional picture, work on your headline, have a pitch in your headline. It's not just your title, it's what you do, it's what you care about, it's what your personal mission is. And include your focus, keep it simple, only mention your main role. And then use action verbs as is often good advice. Use action verbs to show what you're doing. And then your summary. This is the other thing. Think of this as your intro about you, right? This is your chance this is your elevator pitch about you. So think about the people, again, this is sometimes used with sales folk, but think about your customer, your audience, what do they want? What are they looking for? What do they want to know about you? Why is somebody hitting your page and going to read that summary? And so then think about, are you getting across those things that you want to get across about yourself? And then finally, we give them a little bit of homework to think about all these things that we just shared and work on it. We don't expect them to sit there and do a lot of stuff in a session. But this is just sort of a little activity we take them through. All right, so that's part 1, get online. Part 2 is actually get social. So the idea here is that, we have these enterprise social tools, networks, very often in companies. Why? What is the value of this thing? What does it, is it just so that I can share my cute dog pictures, or is there some actual business value here? And so the way that I argue for the business value of the enterprise social networks, I almost always start with this article, What Managers Need to Know About Social Tools. It's an HBR article. We started this a while ago, so this is from 2017. But it talks about the fact that a lot of research has gone into the effectivity or the effectiveness of these digital social networks internally, and how they can help break down silos, how they can connect people, how they can build stronger connection to the company, how they can reduce duplication as two different groups aren't working on the same thing, and how they can increase innovation. The phrase that I really like out of this that I use a lot is ambient awareness. The thing about information and communication these days, we have so much available that we tend to tune it out. Like, it's our nature, it's our survival instinct to tune it out until we absolutely need it. But if you have an ambient awareness of what's out there, then when you need it, you know to go look for it. And so it's just keeping sort of aware of what's happening within your organization as you see and are part of conversations. Externally, the social tools like LinkedIn help us as a company extend our brand's research. It helps us expose our thought leadership in the industry, and it can even inspire people to work here if you are, visible, if you have a visible presence externally. Now, the next piece, and this is a hard leap for a lot of people, is the idea that leaders should have all of these things too. That leaders should have an external presence, because we want them being, extending the brand of the company, showing the company's thought leadership. And this is a nice article on this, how Microsoft builds a sense of community among 144,000 employees, and by using these types of digital tools to connect. And you can also take standard leadership practices you might be talking about and share them through or make them relevant through a digital approach. So my example here is management by walking around. It's an old concept. It's the idea that you are just dropping in on people and getting a sense of what's going on in the organization, because you're physically present and visible to people and accessible to people. If you can get your teams communicating openly on the social networks, you can walk around digitally, you can listen in on conversations, and you can reinforce the behaviors that you want to see. When two people are talking about how to win a certain deal against a certain competitor, and somebody, and they win it, the leader can comment on that and say, yeah, this is the kind of behavior we want to see, or whatever. That having that visit, and then it extends beyond. If it was physical, maybe he or she would say that to those two people. But by doing it publicly, it's like, wow, I want to be recognized by leader X, and next time I'm going to make sure my conversations are visible so that she notices what I'm doing. And that in turn drives more adoption and cross communication. So here's a couple of good tips. One, a lot of times people use these social networks to publish stuff, to post stuff. You actually get more interaction when you ask questions. And it's okay for leaders to ask questions to show that they don't necessarily have all the answers. That's what draws people in when you're asking people's opinion. At mentioning people is actually a service you can provide to others, right? If you see a conversation going on, you don't have the answer, but you know that Rosa has the answer, and you mention her, and now she's in there. You're bringing her into the conversation. You're using your network, your interpersonal relationships to help drive the conversation and bring it to a closure. And then finally, for leaders, the other thing that is important is, again, it's not just a push channel. It's not just you talking all the time. It's an opportunity for you to listen and for you to contribute back by replying. So reply to others, like people's things, so that you're communicating back, look, this was valuable to me, so you get to see more of that. And that goes for everybody, but this good rule of thumb, if for every post you do, have 2 replies and 3 likes. Now, I mentioned down here that this advice comes from Swoop Analytics. I'm going to talk about Swoop Analytics again. Fantastic company, or they are doing some amazing stuff, and they're benchmarking. Basically, here's what it is. It is analytics of people's behaviors within Teams or Yammer or Workspace by Facebook. And it behind the scenes can figure out who your key influencers are, who all the people are within your organization who are communicating, who's not active, all sorts of things, and it all comes down to team dynamics and hidden teams within your organization. Really, really cool stuff. Download their benchmarking reports. I'm not going to do them justice here. They're like 60 pages, so they are meaty, but they give you really good insights about the power of these tools and what you can learn about your company by actually observing people rather than just asking for pulse survey data. you can actually learn based on behavior. So again, the key here is to get people to connect, to get people to consume. So again, don't just post, read what others are doing, and finally contribute, like @mention people, reply. All right, now this is a little WBT, which is kind of nice because it's free at that URL there. It is nice because it brings up two things that we're talking about here, as well as a couple other things that are part of the workplace of the future. The great irony being that this is about 4 years old, and it's still the workplace of the future. But the first there is freeing up the flow of information, which is a lot of what we're talking about with regards to this sharing on social networks and sharing through within the team. And then the other one is working out loud, which we will come to now. All right, so what is working out loud? Working out loud is an approach to work where you are working publicly, sharing what you've got that's incomplete so others may contribute. And by sharing publicly, you end up building trust with others, you end up building relationships with others, and it's a great way for you to build connection. This works inside your company, it works outside your company, it uses the power of social networks in a purposeful and meaningful way. You can go to workingoutloud.com to find out more. Rosa said she just bought the book. Here's the book. You can buy the most recent edition of that. So this was started by a guy out of Deutsche Bank. He's actually North American, but he was working in Germany. And a lot of German companies have picked this up actually, and many in the US as well. It's surprisingly simple, yet hard to explain. To sort of learn to apply the practice, you go through what's called a Working Out Loud circle. It's 4 to 5 people who meet every week for an hour. And within that hour, they do some exercises. Now, the interesting thing, the unusual thing here is that they each bring an individual goal. I want to be a better presenter. I want to be better at managing people. I want to fit exercise into my life. Whatever it is, you bring an individual goal. And you meet every week doing some exercises working towards your goal. Those exercises are encouraging you to be social about that goal, to try to find others, to try to be public about what you're working on. And so the goals can be different, but the things that you are doing with your own individual goal is the same. And the nice thing about going through this process with others is you've got a peer support group. You discover that maybe a tactic that worked for one person, and that didn't work for you, did work for somebody else, so you can see that there's still merit in it. You do it over 12 weeks so that it's not just, hey, go to a class, now expect everything to be different. It's like, no, we'll slowly take steps and try stuff, and over several weeks, we'll try to make it a habit. And you can see here, it starts with attune your attention and goes around to being more systematic and closes out. It's free to use because it became fairly popular. Lots of people localized it, so it's something like available like 8 languages now. It is, what I would encourage is that you try it with a few other people at your company, or even just try to get together a group, maybe with an ATD of people who want to try it, and go through those 12 weeks to get a sense of what it's like and if it would be useful or valuable to others within your company. I have here something which always breaks the internet. These are all videos of different companies that are using it, and it's not that I expect you to actually watch all these as I share them, but I'm going to try to share 6 videos simultaneously just so you can get a sense that there are actually some pretty big, significant companies doing this. Bosch has something like 400,000 employees. ZF or ZF is another biggie, Daimler and Microsoft and Siemens. So most of these are sort of knowledge companies, but it shows that this has legs and is being used in large companies. You wouldn't be out on a limb to use it in yours. All right, I'm gonna move beyond that. So now I'm not going to go through this. This is something that I did at Learning 2019. I sort of took people through some of the experiences so you can get a sense of what the exercises are like. But again, you can go through this all for free in more detail. But these pull a couple exercises so again, people could touch it and get a sense. The first is 10 facts about you. So this is recognizing your own worth. Like, what can I contribute? What do other people want to hear about from me? What are connection points that I have with others? That sort of stuff. Then goal setting. What am I trying to learn? What am I trying to be getting? What am I trying to get better at? What matters to me? What is the thing that I'm pursuing through this, right? And then a relationship list. Who do I already know who knows something about this? Is there anybody? And this is where the circle starts to help you. Well, you don't know somebody, but I know somebody who's trying to fit fitness into their workday or whatever it is your goal is, right? And so you build a list of people and you start looking for ways to connect with them. And you can be aspirational here. It could be public speakers who you care about, and it could be neighbors. It can be a big thing. And then finally, make a contribution. You know, the thing that helps you connect with others is generosity. Right? If John Stepper wrote this book, he's put a lot of effort into this book. If you say, hey, John, great book. Well, oh, that's interesting. Now John knows that you exist, right? You've said something nice to him, and then you can maybe start a conversation. So it's not that anything in here is rocket science. There's even some exercises I'm sure will be very familiar, like write a letter to your future self. But at the same time, it puts it in a nice framework that helps you use it. We tried it with about 13 circles when we did our pilot. It included a number of different countries around the world where we are, and 97% said we should keep or expand it. There's always one detractor, but not every circle completed either. It depends on the group. Sometimes they didn't have time for it. They didn't see it was a priority. But I want to share a couple of the quotes so that you can get a sense of what people felt about it. And another question that we asked is if what would you tell others about working out loud? All right, so you can go on to LinkedIn. There's a Working Out Loud community. You can search for Working Out Loud on YouTube. You can search for Working Out Loud all over the place, also WOL, and you'll see the interesting thing about it is, of course, is that the nature of it is to work publicly. So lots of people are sharing that they're in circles, that they're working on this, that they're exploring this, and it's pretty nice to see, and those who are doing that are pretty positive. Now that was just connect. I told you there was also communicate and collaborate. I'm not going to go into as much depth in these because it's connect is a little easier to share sort of internal stuff because everybody's got LinkedIn, everybody's got Twitter, and everybody's trying to figure out how to do it well. But then when you get into SharePoint, like, well, we have that and maybe you don't. Maybe you have Confluence, maybe you have something totally different that I've never heard. But the idea here sort of starts with this, that we encourage people to tell their own stories. And so, just take a moment and think of something you did last year within your company that you were really proud of. Something you accomplished, something that your team accomplished, maybe a new learning program you rolled out, maybe just a personal goal, right? And now that you've thought about that, like how much of the company actually knows, right? Did you tell anybody? Is it really rolled out? Are you sharing the metrics and successes? Have you, how broadly is that known? Does the CEO know? Does the person below them? Is only your direct manager know? Does your direct manager know? Do people in other parts of the organization know who might be able to benefit because you don't normally work with them? So the idea here is that, we're all communicators, and if you don't tell your story, who will? And this, especially my generation anyway, can feel like this is bragging. But it's not when you approach it from the Working Out Loud approach. You are offering something like I'm offering you here today, something which I did, which worked for us. Take from it what you will, right? But because I'm sharing this with you, you now have something which you might be able to go and make a difference with, right? And you also say, well, that guy's giving me something handy and useful, so that's really nice. So I'm going to trust that he's doing that. Can't think of the right word, but altruistically, that's the word I'm looking for. And I am, but the idea here is, again, you now know more about me because I'm sharing this. Now, then we get into a little bit about how to communicate. So I'm just sharing a couple of slides here because this is always good for everybody to think about. Because if you do communicate on LinkedIn or you publish things, everybody thinks it's the message is the message, and the message is part of the message, but it's not the whole message. So a message also is made up of your audience. You should definitely tailor your message to your audience. Just like I could have told you all about CAD tools and product lifecycle management, but I showed a couple of products that were maybe useful to learning folk. And then the channel you communicate it through carries weight too. The message that and influences that message. The message you share through LinkedIn is going to be different than the message you share through Instagram or the message you share through Twitter. And so if you do something by video, it carries a certain amount of weight because you're choosing video. If you do an article, it carries a certain amount of weight and you change your message accordingly. The other thing to think about in communication is that there are all sorts of things getting in the way of my message right now. There's again, my message, but there's the way that I'm presenting it. There's personal filters, language I'm choosing, cultural norms, metaphors I might use, which maybe don't resonate with you, how you're consuming it. Maybe you're multitasking right now. Maybe you're doing something else on the side. Your own filters, your own language, your own culture, all of that influences the message you hear. It may not be the message I was sending at all. And then in active listening, what you get to do is like talk back and forth and communicate that. But when you're just pushing stuff, you don't. You get none of that feedback that lets you alter and tailor that message more. So it's incumbent upon you to think a little bit more about your message before you put it out, and think about that audience, think about those filters, think about those cultural norms and metaphors, and make sure they resonate. All right, so again, this is just this framework, and the stuff that we're talking about in communication is mostly around here and a little bit around here. It's more that formal push communication in this thing. So I said I'd give you things that you can try, things that you can play with. This is something that I was all set to do and I didn't get to do, which makes me sad. But because of COVID, I haven't been doing a lot of live events. So there's this game. It's free. It's called Space Team. I meant to actually get a YouTube video of people playing Space Team because it is awesome for explaining the trouble with communication today. So the idea behind Space Team is like there's 4 people each with their phone, right? You download it. And each person has a control panel like this, okay? It says nonsense things like Pro Hoop 01, Petatank, Arrow Feeder, Gigafoot, Anti-Lit. Here's your spaceship, and you're trying to get away from this thing that's gonna start coming across the screen. The only way you can get across, the only way you can complete this mission is if you do the things that you need to do, like setting Pro Hoop to 1 or flipping Petatank on or whatever. All of your controls are different than everybody else's. And you get a little command here like set clip crane to 2, which somebody else has, okay? And all of this is real time. So everybody's getting commands and everybody needs to get everybody else to do something at the same time. And so it is a short game. It only takes like a minute. Whoops, sorry, I got too excited there. It only takes like a minute, but it is an awesome example of what we're all dealing with today. Everybody is communicating all the time. Nobody really has time to listen and has a lot of tasks to get done. So it is a great little micro metaphor and something fun you can use to sort of start a discussion about how much competition there is for a message landing. And there you go, that's Space Team. Another little activity which I've used before, and actually I got this from a conference, I'm just advancing through this quickly, is the idea of refining your message, right? So a presenter shares something that they're proud of in 60 seconds, and that's it. Then the recipient presents it back in 30 seconds. And so now that one, it lets you see what did they actually hear, and can you actually make your message shorter? Because what was important to that person is what they're going to include in that 30 seconds. And then you try to say it back in 10 seconds. That's you actually trying to refine it. Right now, this is what I'm trying to say. And then you can actually have another step, which is turn it into a hashtag. Like that's how concise you can make it if you really. So that's a nice little activity. Another one about, which I forgot to include here, about thinking about your audience, again, got this from a conference, was to explain the phone in your pocket to somebody else, right? So explain what your phone does to somebody else as if they'd never seen a phone. And then the second, you get in a group of 3, the second person does that as if it's the 1950s, they're explaining to somebody from the 1950s. So all the metaphors, all the context, all the things that they try to use, totally different. And then the third person tries to explain it as if it's the Middle Ages. And so it's interesting again, because it shows how, depending on your audience, you really have to tailor your messages. So that's communicate. And then the last piece here is about collaborate. Now, in many ways, this is one of our meatier pieces because most of the stuff on the other side, you don't have to teach how to use a social tool, right? Attach a picture. I mean, it's not like it's a big thing to overcome. But tools like Slack and tools like Microsoft Teams are so new that there is really an adoption need. I'm not going to go into the tool, because maybe you don't have Microsoft Teams, maybe you got Slack and whatever. It doesn't really matter. Like, the tool is the tool. And there's another side to this that everybody, or I won't say everybody, because I'm sure you guys don't, but lots of people overlook. And that is the fact that this is about making a good team. And the best teams you are on, you don't remember them being great teams because of the tools you were using. You remember them being great teams because of the people, how much you trusted each other, how well you worked together, that type of thing. So this brings up digital teaming. The idea that in order to work as a digital team, we have to actually change our behaviors a little bit to get to that place of being that awesome team that we actually all want to be, right? Nobody comes to a team saying they don't want to work well with everybody, or at least I hope not. But so how do we do this well? And so we're turning back to Swoop Analytics, who I saw a great presentation. They said something like, we analyzed 5,300 Microsoft Teams, and here's what we've learned. And so this is a slide from that. It was just to give credit where credit due. Kaj, the CEO, was presenting it, but he, was pulling out some of the common themes that you say about a team and showing how in Microsoft Teams they, have a similar parallel. So teams are small, right? They don't have a lot of members. That's where you build trust, when everybody knows who everybody else is. They're bound by a common purpose. You know why you're a team. What are you working on? What are you trying to accomplish? Everybody talks and listens, right? It's not just one person issuing commands. It's everybody having a voice, everybody contributing to the direction of the team, everybody feeling safe that they can speak up. And that, again, related to that they're connecting directly with each other. They don't have to go through the leader to talk to the other person. There's psychological safety, and people talk openly. And again, that comes back to these tools like Slack and these tools like Teams, where people are openly communicating and a little vulnerable in doing so, right? And then the other piece is that we all as a team exist outside of that team and bring back learnings we know from other places and things that can contribute to us. All right, so then this is another group. They've got a book, Innosys has a series called Designing Collaboration. And these are some of the things which they've also built out as best practices within Microsoft Teams. Based on some of that same stuff. I won't spend a lot of time here because it's a little tool specific, but it applies to things like Slack too. But here are some resources, because if you remember, I said I'd share stuff with you that was helpful to me. So one of these things is sort of this Teaming 101. It's this well-known TED Talk called How to Turn a Group of Strangers into a Team. I don't know that you'll be able to find this. This is what we learned from analyzing 5,300 teams, but you can learn a lot from the Swoop Analytics benchmarking report, which you can download for free from them. And this shows, again, the behaviors of good teams and goes into detail on the behaviors they found that support those things on that slide I just showed. And then this is a really cool resource. I don't know if you're familiar with Atlassian. They're a software company that makes Jira and Confluence. The Atlassian Team Playbook is a free resource for teams to go and have like team activities for themselves to improve how they team. They identify the problems in their team, and it has playbooks that they can go through to talk together and solve that problem together. It's a really cool tool, and I'd encourage you guys to look for that too. All free to use. The other thing that I found that is interesting about teaming and digital teaming, and believe it or not, I'm almost done. The other thing that I found about teaming and digital teaming is the fact that we're good, or tend to be, at least well indoctrinated, to teaming with human beings in a physical space. There are all sorts of nonverbals we don't even realize we're picking up on that inform how we behave. Hey, it's okay to talk about the TV show I watched last night or not. Hey, it's okay to talk about my kids or not. Hey, it's I can speak to you directly, or I have to use a lot of passive language and absolve everybody from blame when I speak. Like, all of these little things we slowly learn as the team develops its norms. In a digital team, you actually have to make the time to say those things and maybe write some of them down so that everybody knows what those norms are. They aren't obvious. We have to be explicit about it. And so this concept of collaboration contracts, or what I prefer to call team agreements, comes to that. It's the idea that that these are things that we need to explicitly say and write down. Now, these are some, this one's very team specific, the 10-piece checklist, but these two articles are things which you can find and give you some starting points for those contracts, at least to have the types of things to talk about. And to me, there are things that evolve over time. Like in teams, when you mark something important, what does that mean? Do you expect me to get to it in an hour? Can I take a week? Like, what does important mean? Do I have to click like to show that I've seen it? You know, what does that little action mean? And so these are the kinds of things which you can slowly write down and build up over time so that everybody understands how to communicate, how to collaborate, how to work together. Now, I left this on here, even though this was from an internal slide, because this is another piece which I was going to talk about if we have time, and we do. So we have a champions program as well, which is trying to take people through this so that we're essentially building ambassadors around this. We're building a few people who are experts in experts, you know, like any of us are, but who are at least focusing their attention on this and trying to become more informed about it. And so by doing so, they can become resources within their corner of the organization and help drive this behavior. What I'm doing with them is each one of these things that you saw are pieces from 1 hour things. There's an hour on Connect, there's an hour on Collaborate, there's an hour on Communicate as webinars. But the champions, go through 1 to 2 hours every week for 4 to 8 weeks on each one of those things, and go into how do you help coach leaders to have a digital presence? How do you help communities in Yammer be effective as communities? And so they really deep dive into some of these individual topics to try to be advocates for change within their piece of the organization. So the champions program is one more piece of the puzzle. Working out loud, one more piece of the puzzle. Informational webinars is a high level thing, one more piece of the puzzle. And a site where we publish articles about changes and examples and things, another piece of the puzzle. So like all things, go back to Space Team, communicate often, because not all of it's gonna land. And you know, eventually you'll catch somebody when they're ready to learn it or when they're ready to leverage it. Some other place for resources is my LinkedIn profile. I've written a couple of articles about the stuff that we've done on Working Out Loud. And I've shared other stuff. I have a bunch of a bunch of articles about making different types of videos that I've experimented with. So feel free to check out some stuff there too. Feel free to connect with me. And that, I think, is that. Are there any questions?
Adrian, that was awesome.
Oh, wait, I have
yes.
turned you down. Say that again. I see you speaking.
Okay, so that was awesome. I have a bunch of notes that I took, and Marcella and I were sharing all the different links to everything that we could that you did share, but my question is, will you share this with us so we can include it for the members, the folks that signed up for this presentation, so that way they can get the handout as they are, you know, watching the video. And also, my second question is, where would you say is a good place to start, you know, for an organization that, you know, a learning professional or HR professional that wants to do this? How do we get others to embrace this, you know, working out loud?
Yeah, so the question, you know, really any program for your business is, as an HR person or as a learning person, you know, what's the value of the business of doing this thing? Why does this matter? How is it going to move the needle? So the places that we started were a little bit of our own internal glint surveys. Some of these things were areas we wanted to focus on: more cross-team collaboration, more general awareness. There have been a lot, the famous Gardner study, which everybody cites all the time, about employee engagement being such a driver to business performance. Those things are things that help make the case. And that one particular article from what managers need to know about social tools that I shared, the HBR article, is a great starting point to give you both language and examples of how it's made a difference. The Swoop Analytics reports are actually full of examples, because of course they're trying to sell their software and the power of their software, but they're showing how companies are using it. And part of it for yourself is educating yourself on the value of this stuff. Now, Working Out Loud in and of itself then, as a program, is a behavior change program that can help bring about some of that change, right? It actually, and everything about it, encourages a grassroots movement. So rather than necessarily going and getting buy-in from the top, the other approach is to just start a circle among 4 or 5 interested colleagues, or even among colleagues at other companies. And because you can bring your own personal goals to it, doesn't have to be corporate goals, and try a circle for 12 weeks, see if it resonates with you or if it doesn't seem to bring you any value. And then that will make you a stronger advocate for it if you did find value.
I love the tips that you gave. I'm actually thinking I want to speak with our VP of Information and Technology, because a lot of these, new tools that we're using are because his team decides, oh, we're going to go with Office 365 versus Slack or something like that. So I think he would be a good partner for me anyway. In the organization, to then bring this to the leaders to see how we, adopt some of these principles and start some of this going to help our folks really embrace everything a little bit more and make it easier. Again, like you said, they won't feel so siloed, because that is one of the things that, as a result of COVID, our folks, most 250 are frontline staff that are seeing customers and seeing each other, and now they don't have that. So how can we build that community outside of the physical space?
And actually, in that kind of space, that community might even help the physical space, because now you may have people who are customer facing, but in different shops who never talked before, start building relationships and sharing ideas back and forth. So it can bring a lot of value. The big thing with working out loud, and the big thing about like digital teaming, is it's tool agnostic. It's about the behaviors that you want to take on to leverage these types of tools, regardless of whether it's Teams or Slack or whatever, particular tool you guys happen to be using. It's more about feeling comfortable, being open, being public. And the other interesting thing that Working Out Loud sometimes does is sort of a reverse mentoring. It can be used for onboarding too, because you can bring people into this small circle of 4 or 5 with somebody who's been there for 10 years and somebody who started 3 months ago. And this person, the 10-year person, is helping them expand their network. The other person's helping them see ideas from other parts of or other companies that they were at. So there's a lot of interesting ways that it can be used, and you can read all about that on the Working Out Loud site.
I like that idea.
We have a question on the chat, Adrian.
Do you find the Connect, Communicate, Collaborate works across all age groups in the workplace? Good question. I think the challenges to people adopting it are different in the different age groups. I think a lot of millennials or younger Gen Z are comfortable in this space, but not necessarily comfortable in a corporate culture that doesn't encourage this. So they're happy to talk to each other in a small group, right? But then they don't feel like they can ask a question of the company at large, because they are maybe younger employees and feel new, or maybe it doesn't seem like it's part of the culture of the company. It's not psychologically safe to be open. They don't want to look stupid, or whatever. Meanwhile, the older employees, and these are all broad generalizations, don't necessarily see the value, do feel like it's bragging or talking about themselves if they're sharing something that they've done or accomplished, and it feels unnatural. And so there's different reasons why people may have barriers to doing this naturally within the workplace. But I do feel like all age groups can benefit.
Yeah. There's also another question about a software that you mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that you can use to write notes, draw arrows, and an image.
Yeah, so that's our product. It's called Euphoria Chalk, and I think if I can get to slide 4. There it is. You can go to chalk.euphoria.com. Again, it's like FaceTime, and you can physically draw in each other's environments, or rather through augmented reality, draw in each other's environments. But that what you draw gets anchored in that environment, so that if you draw a circle like she has, and she moves the iPad over here, and that circle's not on her screen anymore, and she moves it back, it is. Or if she looks at it from another angle, it's there. So it's a neat thing. And right now it's free if you want to try it. but that's our product, so I don't feel like I can talk too much about it.
It's a free learning tool, so you can 100% talk all you want about it. You're promoting a free resource
That's
for
right.
now, right? It'd be different if they had to pay for it. So,
Right.
And I've shared the link in here twice for everyone.
All right, great.
Yeah. Any other questions? Great questions too, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
No other questions? All right. Well, I want to again be respectful of everyone's time here today. Adrian, this was amazing. I truly, truly do appreciate you and your time and giving of that time to us and our members so that they could experience this and learn from what your team has done. I have just a couple of things that I will share in closing with everyone. As I mentioned, we're always looking for volunteers. So if you're interested, Marcella is new to this group, so is Heidi, and they're learning new things and helping us do this work that we love to do to bring you learning resources and helping you expand your knowledge. So definitely just let us know, reach out to us directly or go to the website. And then here are some other series of webinars that are coming up all through the rest of this month. And I think I was able to get everything in there through December for you. So these are some of the webinars we've already arranged for the rest of this year, as well as the super interesting groups that we have, our SIGs for job hunters, tech space, and certification. And I don't know, maybe coming soon, a working out loud SIG. Maybe we'll try that for a few weeks, for those 12 weeks and see how that goes and start a new thing. But again, Adrian, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, sharing so passionately the information with us and providing us with these amazing resources on behalf of myself and the rest of the ATD Central Florida Board and our members. Again, thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Adrian, before we break, would you mind sharing your email address with us?
Yeah, it's alasala@ptc.com.
I have put that in the chat as well.
Oh,
for everyone. Excellent. And we also shared his LinkedIn profile. Connect with him on LinkedIn. He's a busy guy, but he does get back to your messages. I can attest to that because I send him plenty messages and he does get back to me. So again, Adrian, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being such a giving individual of your time and your knowledge. We really appreciate that.
Thanks again.
Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.